Okay, welcome. It is 6 o'clock, so it is time to get started. I'm glad to see you again. I missed last week because I was at the Connuga convention in Chattanooga. My wife was there doing some author panel stuff, and I went and just kind of did a hangout, chill weekend, and it was fun. Caught up on a bunch of letter writing, took the one of the typewriters out in the wild, and just set up in the middle of a convention at an empty table and had 23 people come up and ask about it within a very short amount of time. So it was fun just to kind of have a chill weekend with no set schedule to really have to be anywhere at any time. So yeah. So tonight I'm going to be doing got a couple new things to show. And then I'm actually going to be working through the process of starting to retype some of my Swatch cards on col-o-ring off my list on the fountain pen companion, and then eventually next week or the week after going to work on trying to go through and re-swatch those, because as I've started to type the ink names on there, that takes time to get through all of them. So it'll be interesting. But I have a new typewriter. Actually, I have two new typewriters, and we'll be showing those. Really excited about them. I'll be using one of the new ones tonight. Try typing the cards on. So yeah. So let's get started with Incowrimo. So far, I am up to, for the month, 23 postcards or letters have been sent out. And let me go to this here. And I've received some postcards that have come in over the last little bit. This one has the person's address on the front, so I won't show that, but cool little mail day and wax seal there. And then the contents had a fun little handwritten letter. And this one's a neat one because this is a pen that I made that this was written in. That's kind of a neat little thing to see. Let's see, in terms of postcards, this one's the one that I'm not exactly certain who sent it. I think I have an idea. They said in one of the streams they hadn't signed all their postcards for Incowrimo that went out, but not 100% certain, but I think it might be Adeline, but we'll have to see. And then this one was just a cool ink bottle one. This one came from, who's this one? This one's George from the local pen club. It was really neat. That's a cool design. Wherever that came from, I'm going to have to ask him about that, because that's a neat ink bottle postcard in general. And then this one was actually one of the RSS feeds I follow, which is typewriter themed, had a thing where if you wanted a postcard, so it was just kind of a neat little take on, going into the typewriter space of escape the surveillance systems, a message from the typosphere, freedom of thought depends on your finger. So I thought that was pretty neat. And they sent me a postcard there. It was kind of like I've done with the letters, just an open invitation that if you wanted one, send them an email with an address and they'd send one to you. So I thought that was pretty neat. But let's see. I completed the set. So if you've seen, I've bought spoke pencils. Well, I had 2 of the Model 7s, or actually I had 3. So I went and got the 4th one, and I got some other stands. So these now live on my desk, which is the 9mm lead, the 7mm, or the 0.9, the 0.7, the 0.5, and the 0.3. And I keep rotating through them. The 0.3, I can see using it for drawing, but apparently I push down too much. So every time I try and write with it, I seem to break the lead. So this one was going to be more drawing specific. And then in the 3 and the 0.3 and the 0.9, I got these smaller bottoms. And then the 0.5 and 0.7 have the larger. You can see this is the 10.5. And all of them, of course, are the wonderful knurling, because the spoke knurling is just great. But I did get that, and these are all, they just kind of stand up to the side of my desk now, so I can just grab one and use it and put it back in the stand. So I've been really pleased with those. I really like the spoke products. I was rearranging some of my office, and I found that I have 10 different tubes from spoke products, because that's how they ship them out. And I thought that was interesting. And when I say tube, I actually have one here. This is what they ship their pens or pencils in, which is great packaging, by the way. Perfect, purpose built. And this in a padded envelope keeps it well protected, but really neat. So I have 10 of these, and well, technically 9, because I used one of them to send a pen out to somebody, but yeah. Okay, and then if you saw last week's podcast episode, I had Addie from Stationery Stack on, and she talked about some new products that she was going to have coming at the California Pen Show. And then I had a box show up, and I received a present of this, which I'm already using. It's got my notes to remember for the thing, and this is the Honcho, I believe is what this one's called. And this is a new product that she had talked about, like a sneak peek, where she's doing the laser engraving on some of the things. So this is a 3-pin rest. Hey Corolla, hey Dragon Drawer, and hey David, good to see you all. So this was a complete surprise in the mail. Amigo, gotcha. Yeah, David, it's just my last name at Gmail. Feel free to give it out if someone wants it, or send them to the YouTube channel. That's probably the best thing to do. Since I'm not fully making in volume yet, I'm not really marketing it per se, but definitely have someone reach out. I have a couple of things that some San Antonio folks have sent out for commission things, but haven't gotten to them yet. I'm still trying to work out an issue where things are slightly out of alignment. But back to this. This was a gift from Addie, and I love this already because the middle of the 3 holds a pencil. It's slightly smaller in the middle, and then you can put a pen there and a pen there. And this has been great sitting on the side of the desk. But one of the things that is on one of these pen rests, this is the other product I picked up from Spoke, and this is the Icon. When Brad said on one of his streams that they're going to stop doing the fountain pens, I really enjoyed using the Axle so much that I decided to go in and pick up the Icon, and I have been using this constantly for the last week or so. And I found an ink, because this is gunmetal gray, but if you see in the camera, it actually shows more green, and I don't know if that's because I got the green inner liner for it. But the Birmingham Pen Company Savorite, I believe is how it's pronounced. It's like a perfect match for this, and that's what, hold this out of the light, like the color was like a great match for that. So this has been my go-to pen for writing this week, and then having this little stand, this is how it's been sitting if this pen is not in the loop on my A5 plotter that travels around the house with me. So very excited about that. And let's see who else is here. We got hey to the other David, hey to Olive Octopus, catching up on chat here. And some of you I recognize in the chat probably received letters. Over this last weekend, I got 5 letters sent out, and it was luckily there was a blue mailbox outside the hotel. So I sent them from Chattanooga. So if you see a random Chattanooga, Tennessee postmark, that's probably coming from me. And I think they were all pretty much done on typewriter. I took 2 typewriters with me, and I put them to use. And I have a picture I put in the Discord of when I was just set up in the middle of the convention, and at an empty table between 2 other tables that were occupied. And I guess some people thought I was like a vendor or something, because in an hour and a half, I had 23 people come and talk to me either about typewriters. There were a couple people who had never used one, so I just pulled out another sheet of paper and threw it in and let them type out their name. There was one mother and daughter, and the mother asked the daughter, "Have you ever seen a typewriter?" She's like, "No, only in movies." So she did not want to type her name. She wanted to type the word banana. So hey, whatever. But that was interesting. And just seeing, with these manual typewriters, you have to hit the keys with a little bit of oomph. And if you've never used a typewriter, the couple people who were trying them for the first time were typing so lightly it was barely making an imprint on the paper. So I thought that was interesting, but it did kind of show me that something I really want to do at some point is set up a Nashville type in, because why not? And I'll talk about it a little bit later. I'm actually going to be doing something typewriter related at the Arkansas Pin Show, which is coming up at the end of March. And I can't believe it's almost March. But so that'll be what, 3 weeks away, 2 weeks away, something like that. And I'm looking forward to that. And in prep, let's see if I can hit the right button here. Which one is it? I moved some of my camera stuff around and I'm forgetting what I put where. So yeah, I rearranged, and I wanted to have more of the typewriters out so I can just kind of pick one up and rotate them over. So the two on the right were the ones I took with me this last weekend. And then the one on the left is one of the new ones that came to me yesterday by way of a family member who lives in Atlanta and happened to be coming to Nashville. And then also the other one. And so far I haven't used that one as much. I've been using the other one that I'm going to use for the Swatch cards here in a little bit, but it's going to be a very challenging battle of which one of those is going to get used more, because they're the new ones, but also they just type great. So let's see what's on the list here. So I talked about the Stationery Stack. The podcast this morning episode was Coralie from the Cora Korea Crafts / the Creative Corner Nashville stationery store. And her products are carried by other places you're probably familiar with. I think Anna from Well Appointed Desk carries a couple of her clips. Vanessa has some of her products. Gentleman Stationers had some. So definitely check out the episode and her website. Bunch of neat stationery stuff that's not traditional. Like she has washi, and she talks about it in the interview that she got into making washi because she wanted some browns and blacks. She wanted something that's not quite so bright, like a travel themed, and that was part of her impetus in starting that. And there seems to be a good demand for it. And she also has some great stickers. Like I was in the store a week and a half ago, I guess, and picked up some fountain pen stickers and some typewriter stickers and some other washi and stuff like that. Actually, one thing, I'll show these because these are great. So these are all little sticker tins. So this one is all just book spines. So if you're doing something in a journal and you want to have random book spines, and they're all individual stickers. So this was a different approach, and I liked this because it's a little bit easier to. David, I just saw your comment about never use a typewriter, and for me, I never used one until recently because I was right at that verge of. We had an Apple II computer, so that's what my school papers would have been typed on with the dot matrix image printer. But these are just neat stickers that are not. If you want something a little more earth tone, subdued, kind of study-esque, she has a lot of sci-fi and fantasy and other things like that. So just a different take on stickers, but they're really well made, and like a good thick sticker, like a quill in a bottle of ink. So just some neat variety that's not something that I've come across that much. And then the first one that I got actually at Gentleman Stationer, before I realized that store exists, it happened to be the same day Beth and I were going for the first time. These are old kind of like pharmacy labels. So, you'd have like a vintage pharmacy label that you'd put somewhere and you can write stuff on it. So just quirky little neat things, to add into journals. Shake the bottle before using. So that one might be cool for something to go along with ink swatching or the druggist and apothecary. So just something that was different that I really liked and I thought was neat. So yeah, definitely check that out. And then I have the next 2 weeks scheduled. Next week is going to be Rob Sanchez of Rob's Penworks. Looking forward to that. And then the week after that is going to be someone you might have heard of, Mr. Dowdy, the pen addict. So that'll be in 2 weeks. And that'll be, I think, the week before the Arkansas Pen Show. So I'm looking forward to that. I think that'll be a fun episode. Because I'm trying to ask questions that aren't in other interviews as much as I can for people who've been on other guests on other shows and podcasts and whatnot. So hopefully we'll find something interesting there. But I think that leaves the main thing, and hopefully all this works out. I'm going to try, like I said, I'm trying some other camera angles, and I'm going to switch and roll over to the side desk, and we'll look at some of the Swatch card stuff. And I have to switch my headphones around because as I go over, and this is where I have to make sure nope, not that. Let that rotate around so we can see there, and then switch microphones as I hit the chair. So if you can still hear me, throw it in the chat. I just want to be sure the audio, it seems like it's coming through well enough. And I have a other computer over here so I can kind of check the chat as we go. But yeah, Dragon Drawer, Mr. Dowdy, I'm not going to call him Brand Downey because, you know, everybody knows him as that, or the pen addict. But this is the Underwood, the other new typewriter I got, that's really neat because it's got blue accents, and that should be showing there. I can kind of turn it sideways a little, but it's on this mat so it doesn't slide around, because that is something I learned this last weekend, that flat bottom typewriters on kind of convention type tables will slide around, and I was typing and it would be sliding to the sides. I have to keep shifting it over and moving it. So thanks for confirming the audio, Lisa. I appreciate it. So yeah, what I'm going to be doing is I'm using the col-o-ring cards, and I've got, let's see. There we go. Got the face camera, and then I've got the other there. So I'm using col-o-ring, and I'm just going to go through, and I'm starting with my fountain pen companion, and I should have put a link to that, and I didn't even think about it. In a rush to get cameras kind of going in, and right before this started and shifting stuff around, I should have put a link in, but you can search for me. It's DWRDnet on fpc.inc. I believe you can search by username. But yeah, since I'm going to go through my latest with the calendar this year, I really enjoyed typing the ink cards, or the Swatch cards. And I have a couple of samples here, and I'll hold it up to the face camera so you can kind of see them there. And then I think the biggest thing is going to be getting the spacing so that it spaces correctly, where I have them. And I think I'm going to just do it as 2 lines. And let me see if I can move this over here so I can see the chat a little better. But with my, I didn't realize if you move it. Oh, things you learn. So on fountain pen, if you make the window pretty narrow, it'll do like bigger squares. I've never seen that, but that's actually perfect for what I'm doing here. So I'm just going to start with the A's with the Ackerman, and kind of just go through some of these while we're chatting, and I'm going to talk about what's happening at the Arkansas Pen Show as I do this. So let's see what we can get going here. And this is a 1952 Underwood typewriter, the Finger Flight Champion. And I think I'm at the point where I'm ready to add typewriters in officially to YouTube. I think I'm going to do it in a little bit more, not as formal of a style, and just kind of give a tour and kind of add it in, because I'm viewing them as a tool to add into the hobby that I'm already doing. But yeah. So at the Arkansas Pen Show, I'm going to be doing a 2-hour live on Friday evening, where I'm going to have 8 different vendors who are going to be popping in and talking about what like who they are, what they're going to have. It's going to be kind of a preview for Saturday of the show. And I'm looking forward to that because that'll be my first kind of live event, set up with the different microphones and just a live stream going. And I think that'll be fun to be able to get to talk in like kind of a miniature podcast is what it's going to be like, just to, let people get a preview for Saturday. And then also probably earlier in that day, I'll do kind of a somewhat walk around, not the Inkdependence Mike style, but Chad, who's the eel and anchor, he's the president of the Arkansas Pen Club. And I think we're going to walk around and just kind of show what booths are there, but maybe not go into as much detail. And then if there's commentary of things people want to see on Saturday, I have more of an open schedule, so I can kind of go back and do follow-ups and do other at that point. But I'm really looking forward to it. I really like the Arkansas show. It's going to be fun to hang out. And the other thing that I'm doing is they have round tables on Saturday night, and I'm going to be hosting one of the tables on Next Level Analog, aka how I use typewriters in my stationery. So I'm going to do some, because everything I've been typing on is like the letter I typed to someone this earlier today during my lunch break was on Graphilo, and it works great in the typewriter. Or using yu-sari, the papers that work great with fountain pens and inks, they also seem to work really great with the typewriters. So I think that will be neat, and showing how I use it for my undated calendar inserts, and I've typed it all in, and showing some of these Swatch cards where I'm typing it just because I like the look and the aesthetic, and there's something about the sound and feel of typewriters that really clicks with my brain, and I like that. So I'm looking forward to that. That'll be Saturday night of the Pen Show. And Olive Octopus Inc. is also doing a table, I believe. She could probably throw in the chat what hers is on. It's going to be ink swatching in some way. And then I believe you're also doing a panel, and I don't know if that's Friday or Saturday, Lisa, but definitely throw that in the chat. So if anybody's going to the Arkansas show, definitely you'll want to check those out. And is there anybody in the chat who's going to Arkansas? I know some of the Texas folks, it's not too far. So some of you might be headed down that way. I know Anne, who's commonly in the chat, I haven't seen her in tonight. She's going to be there. Some members of the San Antonio Pen Club. There's, I think, kind of like their leader, I don't remember his name, is a vending. And Arkansas is going to have new vendors this year that they haven't had in the past, and it's returning to their original hotel, which is going to be better than the one it was at last year. So it seems like it's going to be a really fun weekend. And let's see, Dutch Masters, Howell's Wood Broom. Okay, so that one's going to get redone. That's the one thing with typewriters for something like this. I don't want to, and I'll show I own my mistakes. Having the missed typo and whatnot. Talking and typing like this is probably not the best combination, but this was a good motivator to get it done. And I also know that I'm going to have to place another order with Anna because I do not have anywhere near enough coloring cards to redo all of mine. So I'll have to see about that as well. And who in the chat went to the California show last weekend? How did you like that? Did you pick up anything fun, or what other shows do you have on your schedule right now? we are still planning on going to Atlanta in Arkansas. And then hopefully I'll be able to add a couple other shows in later in the year, trying to get some stuff sorted with the day job and figure out what's going to happen there in terms of time off and stuff like that. But definitely Arkansas and Atlanta are scheduled. So plan is to focus on playing with inks at the round table. Okay, so a swatching seminar, and that'll be fun because you kind of do a swatching seminar of sorts on your streams and in person where people can actually see and put hands on. That always makes some of those things easier and less intimidating versus, if you've never swatched ink or you're afraid it has to be perfect, being able to show someone that just do it. It doesn't have to be perfect. So that should be fun to hopefully attend. I won't be able, obviously, I'll be hosting a different roundtable, but definitely I'm going to try and go to the panels when possible because, I'm realistic. I know I'm going to get at least a pen, but I'm going to try and limit myself and get a pen and then some pen making materials because there's going to be people there selling blanks. Sean Newton's been putting some pictures up of some really nice looking prospectors and shinobis and whatnot. So there's a good chance another Newton pen will follow me home, but I want to see what else is there before I commit to it. But Sean's pens are always great. And is the typewriter coming through decently on audio, or does it? I have noise cancellation on my microphone, so normally I don't want it to pick up background noises, but I kind of like the typewriter background sound, and I didn't want to do the other mic that would make it possibly too loud. So let me know in the chat if the typewriter sounds are coming through because, or if they're too loud or something like that. Definitely want to adjust as needed. I'm also excited because there's I don't know if Lydia has been in the chat, but she's with the Arkansas Pen Club and is in the online community, and she's also a typewriter person, so that'll be fun to have other typewriter people because we were already talking, in the hangout time afterwards, probably bringing a typewriter too and just kind of setting it up, and if people want to play with it, there's probably some people who've never used it or haven't used one in years, and why not just set them out with some paper and let people play around. It's not going to hurt anything. These things are mostly all cast iron, and it's going to win if it falls or something like that. Well, there's always next year, Dragon Drawer. What about Atlanta? I think Alavactua, you're going down for like a day slash just an overnight, not the full weekend. Is anybody else going to Atlanta? Because I think that's another one, don't have anything official planned there. So that's going to be more of a, because I haven't been to Atlanta since 2016, I think. So that'll be nice to go back there, and sounds like it's going to be a little bit more organized this year, which is going to be a good thing. Yeah, the ones that I'm looking at possibly trying to add later in the year would be Dallas and St. Louis. Seems like that might be an interesting one. I've never been to St. Louis, so that might fit in schedule wise. And then we talked about maybe Orlando. Hopefully next year I'll be able to go to one of the big ones like DC or something like that. I just think that'll be a sight to behold. Yeah, I think Atlanta, since I have family there and they have since moved to a new house we haven't seen, so our schedule is going to be pretty fluid in Atlanta. And I haven't booked the hotel yet because it's non-refundable, and I figure there'll probably be space close enough to, or even if we don't stay at the hotel itself, I'm okay with that. Yeah, it's odd to have a show like that and it be fully non-refundable. I thought that was a little peculiar, um, but who knows? Oh, thanks, David, for yeah. If you don't mind throwing a thumbs up or liking, or when this comes up on the afterwards, leaving a comment. The all the random little things like that seem to help in YouTube world. I was saying the ink that I just typed the card for it here a second ago. The ink that I put in that spoke icon, the Savorite. Apparently, it's my understanding Birmingham Pen Company might not make that anymore, and they're really great greens. I'm gonna have to talk to my local ink encyclopedia at Pen Club and see if there's a good alternative for that one, because that one has been, I kind of forgot the last time I used it. I really liked it, and then I hadn't used it again until this, and I was like, man, this is a great ink. So I keep rediscovering that ink in my collection multiple times. So I think that's telling me something, that I need to keep track of some of those that fit in that category to, let's see. Here we go. Color verse that is not an ink fit. So Dragon Drawer, I own this one here is a Royal. I've got a Royal down here. I've got a Royal down there. And then technically the Singer sewing machine model is also a rebranded Royal. I am trying to repair. I have two Smith Corona Corsair Deluxe that both came slightly damaged. They were like Goodwill auctions, and both of them had different parts that were damaged. So I think eventually I can get the two of them put back together into one functional typewriter, but it's a lot. I'll have to take a picture and show, like, it's in dismantling. Like, one case has a crack in the bottom because they're plastic cases, as you know, as I think they're from the mid 60s, early 70s. They didn't have the metal. They were going for more portable. So as the cases are plastic, I didn't think about it when I saw some videos saying, oh, these are great, except for when they're not. And I understand now, but there's something cool with the teal case. So hopefully I can get the two combined into one functional, because I think it'd be a neat little typewriter to have. But yeah, the Royals, this desk one here, it's like a 1941 boat anchor, and it types great. It's got the glass key tops with like the little metal rings around them. So that's normally the one that I'd been typing the Swatch cards on, since this one's new. And this one, actually, the way the paper feeds, it's got a unique setting to where you can make sure your paper is centered, because it's got a scale on both sides. It's actually been really great for dropping these cards in and being able to get through them in pretty short order. And then if you haven't seen episode 4 of the On the Paper Trail podcast that Joe from Gentleman Stationer and Lisa Vanessa have started, just released from about last weekend's pen show in California. So definitely check that out. I know they got a chance to talk to Addie, a Stationery Stack. I haven't watched the episode yet. Day job had more time taken up today than normal. So I couldn't do as much background listening, but looking forward to listening / watching that tomorrow to see what they've talked about, because I'm sure that'll be interesting. And I like that show because it's a different point of view, since they both own businesses, but they're also enjoy the hobby. It's kind of a nice mixture of the business side / the hobby side, which adds a little bit of a different viewpoint, which I enjoy. Let's see. That one I'm going to leave. It's one letter off. Interstellar, missing the R, but I'm okay with that. It's close enough. It's one of those tiny colorverse bottles that I've owned for way too long, and I don't even know how much is still in the bottle. So that is something I'm trying to be cognizant of if I know that some of these bottles are either empty or about to be empty, I might not remake the swatch card, so that way my swatch cards are current to what I actually have still. Yeah, so Lisa, you've already watched the episode. That's good to know that it's a good one. Just double check something's popping up here. Okay, it's nothing that needs attention. No. Yeah, these colorverse that I'm typing the cards for now are from the Voyager 1 series. So I think I got those at Pelican Hub 2018 as like a freebie giveaway from Lisa Vaness came to town for Pelican Hub that year and had like some random giveaway handout things. So I think that's when I got those. Those were my first colorverse inks. I didn't even know colorverse was a thing at that point because I was Diamine or nothing. And Diamine or Ackerman at that point. And speaking of Vanessa, just a reminder, I do still have the discount code there, DWRDNet, in case you're adding some ink soon before pin shows or whatnot. That should be valid on quite a few items. That might save you a little bit, as I think it's 10%. So definitely take advantage of that. I'm always gracious that to be able to offer that. It's a nice little perk that every little bit helps when it comes to saving a little bit. Let's see. Man, whatever this particular song is, it would be easier to get to the skip button. I think I would skip ahead because this is kind of weird. Oh, one thing that I thought was great this last weekend at Connuga, there's a guy who, if you're familiar with Avatar: The Last Airbender, well, he does this interactive cosplay experience where he runs the quiet room, and it's like Uncle Iroh's tea shop. So that's where I spent quite a bit of time in getting caught up on my journal. Finally got a chance to put Florence the egg in her proper home from the Pen Addict giveaways, and with it being a quiet room, it's free tea and it's good tea donated by a tea vendor. So, I mean, that's like a perfect scenario: a quiet room with free tea, one of the few places that had tables. So aside from when I was wanting to use the typewriter, I could do all sorts of stuff there where I wasn't having to like be in the hotel room. I could be out in the convention and stop in and get free tea. So I've consumed more tea over the last week than I have in probably the past year. I'm okay with that. Oh, David, thanks for stopping in as always. Always good to see you. And yeah, if someone was asking about the pin, feel free to pass information along through the YouTube channel. It has all the contact information. So that's probably the easiest way until I formalize selling a little bit more in the future. But great to see you. That's interesting, Lisa, about the on the paper trail, learning what it's like to be a vendor. It's definitely because I actually did vend Arkansas one time in the past with leather journal covers and whatnot, and then my friend split the table with me, and she did hand-bound books, and it was fun. But it's also a completely different experience when you're kind of stuck behind a table and you didn't really get to look around and um look in the same way, but in a way that's good, because then you're not necessarily buying as much. So there's pros and cons either way. I do plan on getting at Arkansas though, probably at least two more Kadachis ground. I got the one done at when Matthew was in Nashville right before we got iced over for a week, and I started using it more and really like it. So I have two Kadachis now, and I've been using those on a more frequent basis, and I don't want to have to move them between pins. So I definitely will get another Kadachi or two, and then maybe some other guy, maybe another one of his needle points or something, just to add into the mix. I have a architect from him, but I don't really use architects all that much for normal writing. Um, and then Nick Pasquale, seeing some of the new materials he made for Arkansas Pen Show, and it might end up with another Pasquale because he has some cool looking materials that he's come up with, like a matte series. I have a couple of colors, and that might be a good one to get ground as well, because I don't have any ground Bach nibs. I really only have ground Yovo 6s. That might be a good option to get, and I might do that anyway, get a couple of Bach nibs ground to Kadachi, so that way I can move those between like my TriStar Studios pin, my Pasquale pins. Eventually, when I pick up one from Papa J, since Luke also uses Bach 6 instead of Yovo, so just to have a good option to mix in. Let's see where I'm at here. Diamine Tobacco Sunburst. Hey, Rahul, good to see you. Hopefully, you're enjoying your pen. I think you were out of town when it arrived, but hopefully that has been serving you well so far. Good to see you as always. Okay, those are all Inkfint inks from last year. That was with a file. To make the round cap, it's just using files to kind of keep making it as round as you can, and then you take sandpaper and do it afterward. So, yeah, there's no jig or anything for that. It was just using some files. For some of them, I'll use a rasp to take off a lot of material first, and then switch to a file, and then switch to all the sandpapers. I appreciate it. That one, I really like how that material, the pen you ended up with, it reminds me of like countertops. It looks kind of like a granite countertop of sorts. It was a really interesting material. And I don't remember actually who made that. I think Nick said it might have been one of his, because I got a lot of materials when I got the lathe from him, but I'm really happy with how that one turned out. And it's like, this one is another one that has the round cap on it. If it will show up here, let's see. I didn't realize how much of a delay there is on the yeah, so that one's another one that has a round cap. But on the last couple pins I've made, I'm fighting an issue where the cap is ever so slightly out of alignment that I'm trying to sort through. So I've kind of put between being gone last weekend and then trying something with some replacement tooling that I got, trying to figure that out before I use some of the other cool materials I got, because I don't want to make something that's slightly out of alignment. So working through that, but I do miss being at the lathe. It's kind of like using the typewriter. It makes your brain think in a different way, at least for me. It's kind of a soothing. This is reminding me too, there's some of these inks as I'm typing the new cards for them. I was like, man, that's a good ink. I need to put it in a pen. Yeah, kit pens are interesting. I have a bunch of kits that also came when I got the lathe, but they require some other tools that I didn't necessarily want to buy just to make the kit stuff. I think making the kind of just fountain pen style is more my thing. But eventually not gonna get rid of them, because I know there's some other makers who are local who have the right presses and whatnot that are needed for the kit pens, because not everybody uses fountain pens. Most people, once they try them, they're like, okay, I'm sold. Give me all the fountain pens. But there's always going to be a need for a ballpoint or a roller ball or something like that. So definitely hanging on to the kits. If nothing else, it's something else to learn. And the local woodcraft store to me, or the Rockler, they have classes where they do those. So that could be fun just to do, because some of those kit pins are like ridiculously cool looking with the different styles of the kits. So I'm typing the card here for Diamine Blue Black. Dragon Drawer, did you ever find or settle on a blue black ink? If you're still in the chat, I know you mentioned the other day on one of the social medias that you were in the hunt for a good blue black. And I had no idea how many of these I was going to get through, but I'm actually making pretty good progress on getting through these cards faster than I thought I would. Rahul, you'll have to let me know what ink you decide to go in that pen too, because of the colors. It could go something really bright, because that color scheme kind of matches almost anything, I would say. And even if you use shimmer, I think that one, because of the undertones in that material, I would do well with like a silver shimmer, if that's your thing as well. Okay, and I already did all my Lamy crystals, so we're up to the Mont Blanc. And man, my fountain pen companion is really out of date, because this only has 4 of the 10 Lamy crystals in it. So maybe that'll be something that I can look at, trying to get this a little bit more up to date on a future stream or something like that, because I like fountain pen companion, but when you have inks on a shelf, sometimes it's just easier to go and look to see what you have, or see what suits the mood or the pen that you're putting it in. So I don't use it all that much for reference. Probably should use it more, but I think that one so far is winning the longest ink name, the Mont Blanc Antoine de Saint-Exupéry Encre de Dessert. That is taking up the most of these typed cards so far by quite some margin. Okay. And I'll put this out just in case anybody comes across. If anybody finds another bottle of Mont Blanc Enzo Ferrari for sale somewhere, please let me know. I've been using that in one, if not more than one pen at a time since I got it, and I'm already halfway through my bottle. So, where's orange? Ooh, I bet you that looks good. That would be a good one. Bright orange in that. A gray would also be good. Like, oh, if you have the Papier Plume Oyster Gray, that would be a good one that might go in there. Or Aroshizuku Fuyu Desogen, the gray Roshizuku. Or even Diamine Earl Grey if you want a little bit of a darker gray. But I'm definitely I'm on the lookout for another bottle of the Enzo Ferrari, just so when my current bottle goes empty, I have another one in reserve. But yeah, gray with gold shimmer, that would be a good fit for that pen material. The only downside of retyping all these cards is you can get through a list like this pretty quick. Having to pull all the inks out to re-swatch it, that's the part that's going to take quite some amount of time to make sure there's enough swatching sticks and how many can I do at once and things like that. But I think it'll be worth it in the end to have a nice clean set, because that is something that in my big Rolodex I want to make sure it's properly done. And then now that I'm doing the typing, an idea I got from actually Olive Octopus Ink is doing a pin inventory, because I got the double-sided Rolodex. Use the other side for a pin inventory. I've been thinking about getting one. I have an Instax camera / printer, but I'm thinking about getting one of the little sticker printers and then taking a picture of the pin and putting it on a card and then having it typed, when I got the pin, just some quick notes to have a visual inventory. Probably not for every pin. I don't think I need to put one in there for every Preppy or Cucugno, but definitely I want all the maker pins in there, or like the nicer pins in the collection, just to have a good record of it. So Rahul, you can go right now on Amazon and probably get ribbon for most typewriters and have it delivered tomorrow. There's also some, because most typewriters that are not the tiny ones will do dual color, so you can get red and black. And there's Typewriter Chicago, which is a younger guy named Lucas who started a typewriter repair shop in Chicago, has a physical location, and he sells his own branded colored, like you could get teal or green. So at some point I want to get, choose one of the typewriters and put some sort of crazy colored ribbon in it. I think that would be fun, especially as I'm using these for typing out letters, just to add in some variety. Because I was thinking about that, like this typewriter that I'm using right now, it can do dual color ribbon, but the person who had restored this put a single color in it, which is fine because I'm not really going to be typing in red all that much. But if I could get a dual color with black and green or teal or, a bright blue, I think that would be much more useful for how I'm using a lot of these. Yeah, that's a great idea about the pin inventory. I think that's So Rahul, if you're not familiar with Fountain Pen Companion, look that up. If you want to, it can export a spreadsheet out and you can do searchable ink. So if you don't want to manually compile, and you don't have one of those, it's a free account. That's what I'm using now for doing the reference of which cards I'm needing to type. But Fountain Pen Companion, or fpc.ink, is a great resource because it has a searchable database of all the different colors. So you can just kind of go, oh, I have an ink and it's a pilot, and then just select which ones you have if you have it in a sample or a bottle, and then compile a list that way, and then you can export it out to a spreadsheet. That might be a quicker way to start a list if you don't have that already. A lot of people use it, and like I said, I use it to some extent. I don't use it as much as I probably should, but I still have it, and right now it's becoming very helpful to have a reference for something like this. And there's also a pin listing there as well. Now the pin listing is not public, but I've had people who wanted to swap ink samples, and I can send them a link to my FPC profile, and they can see what I have and what I don't have. So I just told, I think it was Dustin or Bailey, and I was like, just surprise me. If you want to send some samples, see what I have and send me something I don't have. That's a good way to share your collection with others, so that if you're looking for something, you don't have a duplicate, or might be one of those, oh, Rahul, you have this ink. Can you bring a sample next time I see you at Pen Club? It's an easy way to reference what someone else has, assuming it's up to date. So for mine, people would go, oh, do you have this? No, because mine is not up to date at all. Yeah, swatching and samples. Everybody does it their own way. There's no wrong way to do it. There's lots of ways to approach it. No, Dragon Drawer, thanks for stopping in as always. Family calls definitely have to come first. Um, but thanks for popping in. Yeah, and being on the back side of the table, it's a different frame of mind because it's a little bit of FOMO, but it's also people will come to you and ask questions, and you might be able to help or answer stuff or show stuff off. So there's pros to either side depending on what your goal is for that show. I apologize. I think the mic is picking up my little bit of a sniffly nose. We're in that weird weather where it's false spring and then it's cold and then it's false spring. So my sinuses have no idea how they're supposed to be responding. Dragon Draw, I'll probably go in for another 20-ish minutes or so. Probably stop around 7:30-ish. So feel free to check back. If not, there's always next week. Let's see. Mont Blanc Toffee Brown. That is one thing I am going to do when I re-swatch these. There's some of these older inks that might not be good anymore. So that's going to be a opportunity to make sure that the bottles I have, the ink has not gone south in any way. I've been lucky I haven't had that problem much, but I'm sure that there's at least a couple of these that... No, Little Craft Fest, that one looked, I think last year was their first year and it seemed to have done really well. And I think it's just going to keep growing. It seems like Little Craft Place is really, adding to their inventory and whatnot. Hey, Average Pin Guy, good to see you. Yeah, that's actually from close to where I grew up. So I just find it interesting that, not far from where I grew up, there's now a pin store that if things were... Ink can go bad. If the cap isn't fully sealed on, it can dry out. Or in my Pilot 823, I have Mont Blanc Toffee Brown in there, and the last time I went to use it, the ink was writing black. So, air is an obvious enemy of ink. So it can do weird things. There's some ink bottles that I don't remember the brand. I think it might have been some early Venta or something like that, where like they didn't have a good seal inside, so the bottle would just dry out when it's sitting on the shelf. So there's all sorts of little things that can happen. It's not all that common across the board, but there are examples where it can do weird things or have weird reactions. Like Diamine Ancient Copper will get crusty. It's just part of how the ink is made. I'm sure there's some other really well-known examples of things getting weird in the ink space. Yeah, the place I'm currently on contract with for my day job is based out of Texas, and they're based out of San Antonio, but they have offices in Houston and Austin and Dallas. So, could be interesting to... I have not tried those Denaturalist. I tend to use col-o-ring, just because that's what I like how the format and how they fit in. So I have not tried those. Olive Octopus, you're probably the most versed in paper and swatching. Have you ever tried any of those India heavyweight index cards? I do have some of the Natsu cards that I bet would do really well with swatching, because they work so well with fountain penning. But I've not tried those. That's one I'll have to see if someone local has some just to play around with. Oh, I'm not familiar with Pen and Gear, Rahul. Is that the brand is Pen and Gear, or is it like a line by a different company? No, I mean, always going to look at small stores, but sometimes there are bigger stores that have some good products that, you know, you don't necessarily want to pass up if it's a good product, you know. I'll have to see if I can, because like when I did my index card video on fountain pen friendly index cards, the Amazon Basics cards that I bought, just as a kind of the baseline comparison, they weren't terrible. I mean, they performed as I expected, but they were not thick. I didn't get, I don't remember exactly, but I have to go watch the video. There are heavier weight index cards, so that might have been a factor too. I got the kind of standard, so heavier weight cards could make a difference. And then it's like when you buy Moleskine. If you get the ones, and I think the YouTube channel is Seaweed Kisses, where she really likes the thick Moleskine for her journaling, and she did all the legwork of reading the labels and figuring out which ones, if they're made in whichever country with the right branding on it, were actually good for fountain pens or gel pens or fine liners. And if it wasn't that, just return it because it's going to be bad. So there can be diamond in the rough of any paper company or brand, you know. It was somebody, I don't know if it was on a stream or if it was where it was, but I think the HEB notebooks for you Texans, because there's quite a few Texans in the chat, they had a really good set of notebooks. They were at HEB. And if you're not familiar with HEB, that's like a Kroger or Publix equivalent that's mostly in Texas. So there's always going to be those kind of unsung heroes that might be a gateway to getting people into the hobby. Because I know when I first got into pens, I used Rhodia. That's what I used. That's what I saw, and I was like, oh, this is what you use with fountain pens. I never took the time to kind of, okay, why is this not one to roll in there? I didn't explore because I didn't know what we got going on here. Why is this not what I'm doing all of a sudden? There we go. But Rhodia, I mean, it's still a good paper. Is it going to be my go-to now? No, but I still have some because I stocked up in the past. But I'm sitting here looking under this camera is just a row of different A5 papers. Got a small stockpile of Life Bank paper because that's a paper I found too late. And when I found some available, of course I was going to pick it up because I really like it. How to talk to your cats about aliens. So my first journal that really got me into it in like 2013 was the place I was working at the time. You know, when IT people would bring in those kind of, I can't think of the brand. I wanted to say Paper Republic, but it's not that. It's like the kind of mass market leatherette journal cover brand that has whatever vendor logo etched on the cover. And that's what I started with. Started with a Pilot G2. And then once I found fountain pens and got into there, I used that same journal. It took me forever because I had a long hiatus where I wasn't using it. And I eventually finished it, but it wasn't the best paper, but it worked. It was suitable. Um, no, it wasn't a Moleskine. Um, paper blanks. Paper blanks is that kind of generic you're going to find at a bookstore, or like the freebie kind of thing where they're selling it, buying them in bulk and then just laser etching a logo in it, or embossing a logo for whatever company into the cover. And mine was a black leatherette. I don't even remember what the company was that the logo was in there. And good to see you, Adeline. And a question for you. Was this from you, postcard wise, that I'm holding up to the face camera up in the top there once it shows up? I think I'd seen you say you were sending out some postcards and you might not have signed all of them. Okay, I was thinking that because it didn't have a name on it, but I was like, I remember seeing that you referenced that you hadn't put your name on all of them. So thanks for sending that. I appreciate it. See, and then there's inks on here like Noodler's Black. I got that in 2014, and I never really liked it because it wasn't black, and I don't even know if I still have the bottle of it. So there's definitely some that I need to Rahul, I will send it to you. It's probably out there if you search, but I don't necessarily have it posted somewhere. I've been contemplating getting a PO box just to make it easier, so then I can just dump it out wherever. But I will send you, and it might be on the return address if you still have it from your pen that I sent, because it would have had that as the same return address there as well. We're down to the Papier Plume. Oh no, if you want to send something, have at it. I love getting mail, and that's part of why I'm sending letters out, because I'm every so often people send them back. And I'm trying to be good about replying in a timely manner, and I got a little bit behind as I started making pins. And I know one of the Davids in the chat, I think if you're still in here, David Buckeister, I set way too long on a reply there, and I apologized in the letter. And then when I was in Chattanooga this last week, and I was like, I'm getting caught up on all these letters. The one thing I forgot was the letters people had sent me, so I wasn't able to reply with answers to questions that were in them. So I just kind of had to start from scratch. It happens, but at least I got some letters sent out, and I'm trying to get a better balance of time. I tend to do better when I'm busier, and now that the podcast is back and going, I'm doing much better with time management. If I'm constantly doing something, I normally don't have things fall to the wayside as much. Hey, week twos, good to see you. Let's see, Papier Plume Oyster Gray. Oh, that's great. I'm glad it made it there. You never know when you're sending from a different city with a blue box. And that might be where I saw that, is probably in the San Antonio Pen Club Discord about the HEB notebooks. That there's some good ones there if you find the right ones on the shelf. No, it's a cool postcard. Adeline, postcards are so quirky, and I said I was going to try and find some in Chattanooga, and then I never looked because I didn't go anywhere that would have postcards. Um, but I think it was Needle Girl who said at Dragon Con there was a booth where someone just was set up as a vendor. For $5, you could sit down on a manual typewriter and type yourself a postcard and mail it. And I was like, that sounds like fun. That would be, probably just maybe break even if lucky for a weekend. But I think that would be an interesting way to go to a convention or something like that. Just kind of set up and a couple typewriters if people want to send themselves a letter, because there's more people who've not used them than they have. And, it'd be an interesting conversation starter if nothing else. But I bought the box of the bird postcards, and I have so many bird postcards, and they're kind of boring. But I still want to use them. So yeah, I don't know if you were on earlier, Adeline, when I was at the convention and I set up at a table just out in the middle of the kind of multi-fandom sci-fi anime convention. There weren't many tables, so there was a table that had nothing was set up on. There was one chair behind it, so I just went, set my bag down, pulled the typewriter out, set up, and started typing. People came up, "What are you doing?" "Oh, I'm typing some letters. It's Incowrimo, International Correspondence Writing Month." And someone just looked at me like, "Are you what?" I had one person come over and say, "Why are you doing it?" I was like, "Well, I owe people replies," and it perplexed them that I was writing letters, much less doing it on a typewriter. No one asked if I was an author, but my wife said, because she got a couple of pictures of me when she was walking up from one of the panels she had been in. I had my kind of a hat I got in Ireland, so that kind of news style, whatever I can't think of the proper name. Just sitting there, it looked intentional. So I'm sure some people thought, but then I had some people come up, "Man, that's so cool, you're using a typewriter." There was one lady who came up, "Oh, I have a typewriter at home on the shelf for display, but I don't have ribbon for it, so I couldn't use it. You can go on Amazon." She's like, "What?" Like, yeah, go on Amazon. You can search, go to the typewriter database, you can look up what you have, and there's tons of great resources. So I like to think that she went and found. So that's kind of a loaded question. If you don't mind tinkering a little, like if you're on Facebook Marketplace can either find you some great deals or some questionable. Most of these older typewriters with a little bit of cleaning, and there's a bunch of great YouTube resources on how to do that. I mean, you could find a decent typewriter for $40. I've got a couple of mine off Shop Goodwill, like my Singer T41, which is a great little typewriter from, I think, the late 60s. And it showed up. I put a new ribbon in it, and it typed right away. It didn't even really need much cleanup. I used like some Simply Green and wiped it down. So, and then also, depending on where you're located, there are more and more typewriter stores kind of opening up. Nashville has a typewriter store. There's Typewriter Chicago. There's a guy this typewriter I'm using now came without a case. So I knew it was coming. So I started looking, and I already found a case, and it'll be here Saturday. Just somebody who they find old typewriters, they restore them a little bit, clean it up. So there's places out there. I am not an expert yet, but as you can tell, if you've watched my channel for any amount of time, when I get into a hobby, I get into a hobby. So I've learned a lot in a pretty short amount of time. So there's probably going to be some you'd want to avoid. So feel free to shoot me a message if you find one like on Marketplace or something like that you have a question on. I will answer the best that I can. I might be able to point you to another resource, but most all of mine I have found on Facebook Marketplace or Shop Goodwill auctions. I think, Anne, you got yours with a German keyboard, so you can type all the German quartz keyboard, all of your odes to Motorhead from possibly good, or no, I guess that was local to you. But the Shop Goodwill, I did get the two that were both broken in a little bit of a different way. but that's kind of a risk with an auction. At least with the marketplace, you get to go look at it. But if you don't really want to tinker, well, you're a naturalist. Just to give reference, I got my first typewriter in October, which is this one right here, and I now own 12. So I guess you could say things. I wrote in the letter that I was replying to Eric from Amarillo. He was asking how the typewriter stuff's going, and I said if I could put a meme in here, it would be the Anchorman meme of, well, that escalated quickly. But I'm using them all. I have them out. I just rearranged my office I showed earlier, and I'll pop over here in a minute as I start to wrap up to the other camera, where I now have, like, below me here, I could grab 3 other typewriters. I've got these 2 here. I've got 3 others over there. I've got one that was given to me that's in my garage that I haven't even started to look at. My sister runs a drama department where she teaches, and she was donated a really old typewriter that, like, as a prop that they didn't need because they already had one, and it's similar to this thing where it probably weighs close to 50 pounds. The carriage doesn't move, but it's probably from the late 30s, early 40s, so there's a good chance it could be cleaned up. Like this typewriter down here, if I can get it out without making a mess, was the second one I got. So this is a 1935 Royal Model O, and the margin adjuster on here wasn't working when I got it. So I sent an email to Lucas, who runs Typewriter Chicago, and he had the part. He had a parts machine. He just mailed it to me. So the typewriter community seems to be very much like the pen community, that people want to help you get started because they enjoy the hobby. The person I got, this one I'm using, and the other one from Atlanta area, he apparently is part of the Atlanta Typewriter Club. So when I go down to the pen show, if they're having an event, I will see if I can stop by, because why not? You know, they had a type in, and because, you know, if you're going to do a hobby. I'm already trying to find somewhere where I could arrange a Nashville type in, because I've got enough typewriters to do a first time event that I think could be fun. Just, it's kind of like when someone's new to pens or paper, like come to Pen Club for the first time. They get to just, you know, you can kind of see their eyes. They're like, oh, I'm a little bit overwhelmed, but you can put something in their hand and say, use it, try it, you know. And the typewriter, it's not going to be for everybody, but for me, I'm really enjoying them, and it's just a different type of, you know, I look at less and less screens every night, which I'm okay with, which is ironic for doing YouTube and whatnot. But yeah, and on the Pen Addict Slack, if you're on there, I requested that Brad add a typewriter, you know, area. So there's one on there. I have one on my Discord, you know, for the YouTube channel members and stuff like that. So there's resources out there, and, you know, you can be hit or miss. So Rahul, definitely with you being a pen person, and anybody, if you're not in the Pen Addict Slack, if you email hello@penaddict.com and request to be added, then Brad will eventually add you to the Slack, and that's a great resource for all things pens and stationery. But yeah, so let's see, where was I at on inks? Last one was Poppy Bloom Oyster Gray, so we're into the Pelicans. And a fun fact for these older typewriters, they don't have a 1 key. You use a lowercase l. So it's not until into the, I think, mid 60s is when they started making typewriters that had an actual 1 key. So that can throw people off a little bit of, wait, why is there not a 1? And then a lot of these still have like a 1.25 key or a cent sign. And then if you get one in a different language, it might have like a pound mark or other things like that for whatever currency where that typewriter was meant to be the main market for. So it's all sorts of quirky little things. Now, one thing I would say be cautious of, there are some vintage names that have been remade as cheap knockoff type stuff. Like you can go on Amazon right now and get a Royal Classic, which is going to be plastic. I would not suggest doing that for what you're going to spend. You could probably go find a vintage one that just needs a new ribbon for much less money, and it's going to last and perform much better. So as with anything, there's going to be knockoffs. So do a little bit of research, ask the questions, so that way you're not buying something and then it's failing on you and you're having to buy it again type thing. And like this, the little bit older version of this typewriter I'm using, there's like a mythical version out there that there's a couple available right now, but they're like $1,400. In the early, or I guess the late 40s, they made a version of this where the case had a fold out tripod on the bottom. So it was meant for like field use. And I think that would be cool to track one down. Oh yeah, there's at Adeline, there's tons. Now, a lot of typewriters were made in other countries for the US market, so they're QWERTY, but you've got a lot of quartz. You've got someone posted on the Slack subreddit today that they had seen, and I saw it on some of the typewriter Facebook groups, an old English font typewriter. You can get typewriters that have script font. So when you get in, you think of fonts on a computer now, how many characters per inch is a big thing on typewriters. And actually, somewhere here, I have the 2 sheets from these typewriters that I just got. Kind of type in I'm going to hold it up to the face camera here because that'll show it a little bit easier. But just how different the 2 fonts look between these 2 different typewriters that I just got. Man, I forgot. So you can see one has a much smaller characters per inch. It's got a different typeface. So you can really get into the weeds of what you want it to look like. If you want it to write in script, so it looks like you're typing in cursive, you can find them. Some of those are more rare, so you might have to hunt longer, but they're out there. Or for people who know what they have and they're selling, they're out there at a price. That's one thing that I like so far about Facebook is, well, you can potentially find someone who found it in an attic and they're just trying to get rid of it. Or like that Model O I held up a little bit ago from 1935. That was a single owner. It was a older guy in his 70s selling it for his aunt. So it was only ever owned by one person, a 1935 typewriter. So think of that history. Or at Christmas, the blue one you might have seen before, that it's not as easy to pick up because it's heavier without moving a bunch of stuff. But I have my mom's Olivetti that she had all through high school and college, one owner typewriter from the 50s. So there's some cool stories. And one of the ones I got off Marketplace, it had a name label on it, and I looked the lady's name up and she had passed, and I got it from someone who bought like a storage unit, and she'd been a Nashville school teacher for like 40 years, and it was her little Smith Corona Skywriter typewriter. That's the one that I had with me this weekend, set up out in a convention. So, there's a lot of history, and you kind of get into the what ifs, like, on this one from 1941, what all could have been typed on this? Or like if you have a vintage pen, what was the life that pen had in the past? Think of all the things it could have been involved in writing or doing. And that's kind of cool to think about. um, the history that goes with these vintage items that are still in demand and able to be used. It's just kind of cool to think about. Yeah, if you've never used a typewriter, you know, find one somewhere, and you might have a typewriter club near you, and they do type in events. So there's shops like, um, there's a big typewriter convention every year, and I think in Minneapolis or Milwaukee, one of the M cities, and it's called QWERTY Fest, and it's people go there from all over the country, and it's a typewriter festival. So, that's where you're going to see the really weird, rare things and stuff like that. So, as with any hobby, there's always going to be some sort of show or convention or gathering. And more often than not, the people there are going to be welcoming to someone who's new because they get to share their hobby with someone who knows nothing about it. And, because that's how, think about pen shows, all the new to fountain pen panels or stuff like that, or pen clubs. But DR Naturalist, good hunting if you want to get into it. You probably don't need 12 unless you really want 12. I got a couple before I really knew what I was doing, but I looked out and I got good ones. There's one I have that needs a little bit of work, that of all the other ones I have, it's the one I would reach for last. So it's going to be, put up to find a new home because the bell doesn't ring. And one thing with typewriters, there's a lot of models and a lot of rebranded names. So like if you think of department stores back in the day, so the Singer sewing machine one I have is actually a rebranded Royal. The Sears are rebranded Smith Coronas. The so there's different. There were makers, and they'd make the Montgomery Ward version or the whatever department store. So you have to kind of look up. But typewriterdatabase.com is a community compiled resource of serial numbers, so you can get an age on things. Retro PCs, that would be, I'm a little bit torn on that because I like gaming, but I also hate gaming. I hate single player games. I get bored. So I've never been one who could go to a game system and just play a single player game all the way through. That just is mind boredom for me versus like playing multiplayer or something like that. I love it. So a lot of those older games are going to be the part that I would not necessarily enjoy. So, have at it, do your thing. There's never a bad time to go into your hobbies. But that is one that I'm going to pass on. Now, I do wish I still had my N64. I was talking about that the other day. I have no idea what happened to my N64 because I had it through college. Because I won it at my senior prom in high school, and that was the era of GoldenEye. So it was used quite a bit during the first couple of years of college. No, and I like the aesthetic, the vintage aesthetic. Although whenever I do that, it makes me think of wanting to go watch Doogie Howser again or something like that. Because, when I think of old computers, that was one of the first times you really saw computers like that on TV. Doogie Howser with his word processor journal, or there's the, I was talking about it the other day with, because a friend texted me his wife was at Conuga. She's a vendor, and he's like, if I would have been there, I would have just had to stand behind you with a speaker blaring the Murder She Wrote theme. And I'm like, most people here would have no idea what that is. But he said I should do if I go to the convention again, pop the polo shirt. If you remember from like the end of the A Team or some of the other sitcoms of the 80s, the Stephen J. Cannell productions, where he's sitting there at the typewriter typing and he pulls the paper off and throws it in the air. So, I might have to do that next time. Pop the collar on the polo shirt and do the Stephen J. Cannell. Now, other games I like card games like Phase 10 or Uno. I play a mean game of Uno. Uno games should last multiple days, where you take your cards with you so that there's no cheating, or Phase 10 or stuff like that. I love that kind of game. And I played a little bit of D&D as an adult, and I was never really into it. I played Magic as a kid, but D&D I liked, but my friends who are in it, I like the battle stuff. I am less of the story. I'd much rather just have constant battle stuff, like rolling and all that kind of stuff. But I appreciate it, but there's different levels, and you have to find a group, I think, that is playing at the level you want to play at. And that is a good thing, because that way people who really want to get into like these long standing games that last forever, go for it. I'm more of a short burst. It's like board games. I'm sure we all have friends who collect board games and they get all the new board games that come out, and you go over for a game night. And by the time there's a new game that you're hearing the instructions and whatnot, that you're like, okay, now we're finally going to play. It's been 30 minutes. You're like, I don't remember what you were talking about. I wanted to play the game. So then you end up playing a game you're already familiar with. That's how my brain is. I would much rather just play the same game and get into the game initially. But we all approach those in different ways. So I'm going to do my 2 Pannonia inks, and then I'll shift over and kind of wrap up. I think for tonight. That's one reason why I think so many people like the stationery hobby, because you can choose, oh, I want to write in green, and everybody's going to have their favorite green, or you can choose and customize it to exactly how you want it to be, but everybody else appreciates that you're customizing it to how you want to be. You want to use this paper or this journal or this typewriter. And so, Rahul, if puzzles would be easier to travel with, that would be like an ideal thing, is you set up a puzzle on a cruise ship. Now, journaling or writing, that's an easy one, but if you got into typewriters, you could take one of the little manual ultralight typewriters with you and be that guy on the cruise ship, sitting there with a beverage and a typewriter, typing stuff out, and see how many people come up and ask you questions. Because when I sat down, I was like, okay, I'm going to start a counter, and I was just making little hash marks on a sheet of paper to see. That's how I know it was 23 people. But I didn't mind, because some people were asking, and because I also had some of my pins out, and like the Packer Graffilo, and I was taking everything in my Galen A5. That's what I was using for like envelopes, and I would have written more letters, but I only brought 5 envelopes. So I used all 5. Then I was like, well, I guess I'm done with writing letters for this weekend, because I didn't want to have the sheets possibly get bent up in transit back home. Okay. Let me shift back over to the main desk here, and we'll look at how many cards typed tonight, and then wrap up for this evening, I believe. Okay, so I gotta switch my headphones back. Okay, so let's take inventory here. This is how many cards I went through. 2 pages in the journals, and then spend 30 minutes a day complaining about into space aliens. So I remember when I used to go, my family used to cruise a lot, and when the Lord of the Rings movies were coming out, I was like, I'm going to read the book. So I got the combined all 3 in 1, and I would go into the library, and which was also in the evening, the cigar bar, because I used to have an occasional cigar, and I spent more time in there because, my family, they wanted to go to all the trivia and all that. And I was like, no, I'm on vacation. I just want to sit in here and read and have a beverage, maybe smoke a cigar. And I spent more time in the library on the cruise ship, which I know sounds kind of ironic and boring, but that was a great vacation, that everybody does it different. So these are all of what I got done. And then I'm going to have to look around. I think I might have another pack of coloring, but I only have about 150-ish inks. So this is a decent chunk if you take out Inkvent calendars and stuff like that. So, but, and Anne, I was showing earlier, I got your letter, which I really love the little embossed stationery, and the fact that this was written with a pen I made. I think that's kind of cool. And then, of course, the decorative envelope, which I'll hold this way so I'm not showing your address to the world. And then these are the postcards, the one from Adeline, the one from Richard Pohl, who's the author of the Typewriter Revolution book, where he was sending these out, which I really like this. He had it up as an image where you could make it as a desktop background, which I think I might need to do. And as I was thinking about guests for the podcast, I think I might try and add a typewriter person in here or there who also happens to be a fountain pen user, like on Lucas, who owns Typewriter Chicago. On one of his YouTube videos, he shows that he keeps a TWSBI and some of those like on the counter of his desk. So there's a lot of crossover between the communities because typewriter is essentially another stationary tool. So I might try and add here or there a typewriter related person because I find interest in that. And I think there's enough people who probably it's curious, if nothing else. And then I've been writing out the plans of how to make a video because what got me into wanting to get a typewriter is doing the typing out a letter to Tom Hanks, where he will, in theory, type you one back. So I've been trying to think of how I want to do that video, and I'm going to do it a little bit more. I mentioned this earlier. I didn't go into a bunch of details, but I got a different camera where I can kind of do it more vlog style, because I think that'll be easier to just kind of talk through and do kind of a voiceover to go with it. But I really want to do that because that's really what kind of planted the seed in my head that, I need to get a typewriter, because seeing it, and I don't know the person on the Gentleman Stationer Patreon Discord who did. I don't know them in real life, but I don't think they realized that them saying that they had typed a letter and got one back, what that created. But I'm here for it. Obviously I took to the extra subset of the hobby and ran with it, but it's been fun. So that's pretty much what I have for tonight. And like I said, the next week's podcast guest on next Thursday is going to be Rob Sanchez of Rob's Penworks. And then the following week will be the pen addict himself, Brad Dowdy. As what was mentioned earlier, if you're not on the Pen Addict Slack, email hello@penaddict.com and request to be added. I think he does that pretty quick. And then, that's just a great resource. And then if you're not a YouTube channel member and you're interested, the link and all that is in the description. There's like a couple $1 a month plan. There's also a plan that after X number of months at a certain level, you can end up with a pin made by me and stuff like that. So check out those links if that's of interest to you at all. I appreciate you hanging out. I know this was kind of a different stream, but I kind of like some of the getting productive stuff done while getting to talk to other people. And then this is one other thing that'll be coming soon. I did pick up the Ebonite Asvine J16, which found it was finally back in stock. I need to make that as a video, so that'll be interesting to play around with, because I really like the titanium version. I think the Ebonite, and I haven't opened the box yet to do an unboxing, but I have a feeling it'll be interesting to use. So no, and Rojo, I like this. I like that it's chill. There's kind of a regular group of people in the chat, and it's, you can easily listen in the background or watch while you're doing other stuff. It's a nice way to kind of approach the weekend and have a chill evening. So I'm always appreciative for whenever anybody's able to stop in and follow along. So I'm going to leave you all there for tonight. Have a good evening, and I'll catch you next week.